Hey, it's Jess. Welcome back. Today I'm here with my monthly wrap up where I'll be talking about all the books that I read in February of 2024. And I'm going to try to put my StoryGraph stats up on the screen. I'm still learning kind of how to do editing, and especially like fancy editing like that. So hopefully I can figure it out. But if I don't, it's because I couldn't figure it out. And now you know. So, starting off with my first stat, I read a total of 11 books, which equaled out to be 3,114 pages. And if I was able to insert the picture, you can see that it's a very eclectic mood scale. There should be like a circle pie graph with different moods of the books that I read, a majority of them being dark. Not surprising, I read a lot of horror. When it comes to fiction versus nonfiction, this month I read 3 nonfiction books and 8 fiction books. I am really proud of myself for getting 3 nonfiction books in this month. It's something I try to read. I tell myself I want to read at least one nonfiction book a month. That doesn't always happen. There are definitely months where I don't have any nonfiction books, and I'm okay with it. I don't force myself to read things, but I'm trying to expand my horizons and expand my genres when I'm reading. So I'm really proud of myself for getting 3 different nonfiction books in a single month, especially being February and it being the shortest month of the year. As you can see, if I was able to get the stats up, my most read genre was horror. That shouldn't be a surprise. I'm pretty sure I've said many times in the past, I mostly read horror books. I also like fantasy, sci-fi. I'm really trying to get into different genres of books, but I generally gravitate to horror books. So I was not surprised when I saw that most of the books that I read ended up in this genre. As far as the format type, I read 45% of my books were audiobooks, 45% were print books, and 9% were digital books. And I was really surprised when I saw that. I don't typically, it's only been within about the last 6 to 7 months that I've really gotten into audiobooks and started listening to them as often as I do. So for it to be almost half of my books to be in the audiobook format, it was surprising to me, but I'm proud of myself for pushing myself, for trying something, getting into something a little different for me. And I enjoyed all the audiobooks that I listened to, so that makes me want to keep listening to audiobooks. As far as ratings go, I had an average of 4.63 stars in the books that I read. And I had 2 4-star books, 2 4.5-star books, and 4 5-star books, which is amazing. Again, especially for being the second month of the year, I am so happy. I had 4 5-star books. That is probably the most in one month that I've had, maybe forever, but definitely a long time. February was a great month for me. And there are 3 books that aren't listed in my star ratings because, as I've said in the past, I tend not to rate nonfiction books. I read 3 nonfiction books this month. The first one was Freedom is a Constant Struggle by Angela Davis. And this is a collection of essays and speeches that Angela Davis has given and written about racism, sexism, bigotry, prison abolishment, about religious words in our everyday life. And it was the nonfiction book read for Jess Owens on YouTube. She has a monthly nonfiction book club, and this was the book that they chose to read, so I decided to listen to it. And can I just tell you, if you're going to read this book, find the audiobook because Angela Davis has a wonderful presence. She obviously knows how to use her talents. She has a great way of projecting her thoughts and feelings into her speeches, and it was difficult to listen to because, again, difficult subject matter, but I really enjoyed listening to it. I loved listening to Angela talk about her ideas and feelings about all of these different things. The next nonfiction book I read was Love, Pamela by Pamela Anderson. And this was, again, I read it as an audiobook narrated by Pamela Anderson. fabulous. I loved it. I love her voice. I was very interested to learn more about her and about her life. And I do all of these books. I have another video on my channel talking about my experiences and more of a review about these books. So check them out. And if you need to find a specific one, let me know and I will link it for you. But this book I read because Books and Lala has a buzzword readathon. And for February, the buzzword was positive words. And so I thought love, obviously a very positive, kind word to me. So that was the book that I chose for the buzzword readathon. And the last nonfiction book that I read in February was The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, which is a memoir of her growing up throughout her life. It apparently is a very popular book. I had never read it before. My best friend has read it and was surprised when she learned that I hadn't read it. And I really enjoyed this one too. It was written very well. It was easy to read. It was a lot about growing up in extreme poverty and basically having horrible parents. I disliked basically everything that her parents did and every choice that they made, which I think is probably the point of writing the memoir. But it has a happy ending. It's worth reading. I'm really glad I got to check it out. And I'm glad that now I'm part of the community that has read that book. The first 4-star book that I read in February was Midnight Ruin by Katie Robert. And this is the 6th book in the Dark Olympus series, which is a spicy dark romance series that is a loose, very loose, retelling of Greek myths and Greek mythology. And this book followed Eurydice and Charon and Orpheus. And a lot of other stuff happens. Again, 6th book in a series. I did not like this one as much as I've liked some of the other books in this series, but obviously I still enjoyed it. I gave it a 4-star. If you're into spicy dark romances, I recommend, but I definitely recommend you read at least one of the other books in the series, but preferably the first few books in the series before you read this one. The next 4-star book I read in February was Spy Family Volume 1 by Tetsuya Endo. And I've talked a lot about this book on my channel. I just had a review of it. It is a book about a spy who, in this story, his code name is Lloyd Forger. He has to get a wife and a child for a mission he's on. The wife that he finds named Yor is an assassin. The daughter that he finds is Anya. She reads minds. He doesn't know that Anya reads minds and Yor is an assassin. Yor doesn't know that he's a spy and that Anya is a telepath. Anya knows both of those things about her parents because she can read minds. Hijinks ensue. I really liked the first book. I can't wait to finish reading them. The first 10 volumes are out. The 11th volume comes out, I believe, in April of this year. So next month. And I look forward to adding that to my collection. The first 4.5-star book that I read in February was The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. And this book was published in the 70s. It is a book that one of my favorite movies is based on. When I was a child, every October, the movie The Halloween Tree would play all month long. I feel like you couldn't go a day without seeing it on some channel. And I adore that movie. I've always kind of been a spooky girl. I really like the horror, and this is a child-friendly way to get into spookiness. So in the book, it is about 8 boys in 1972, and they are going out trick-or-treating like they do every year, and their friend Pipkin, who is kind of like the unofficial leader of their group, is missing. And the group of boys goes to this creepy old house where this gentleman named Mr. Moundshroud lives, and he takes them back in time to learn kind of about the history of Halloween and the history of why we choose the costumes that we do and what it means when we dress up as these things, as a skeleton, as an ape man, one of them's an ape man, as a witch. And again, I adore the movie. I really liked the book. And I listened to this on audiobook. It was a short afternoon read for me, and I'm glad that I finally listened to it. And I'm probably going to listen to it again in the fall just because it definitely has like spooky Halloween vibes. I really recommend that you check it out. The next 4.5-star book I read in February was Whispers in the Mist by Darcy Coates. And this is a Black Winter novel. There are a total of 4. This is the 3rd book in that series. We are following Claire and Doran. And this is the 3rd book. They're kind of out in the world. It's kind of like a zombie apocalypse book, but you don't get that until the end of the 1st book. Claire and Doran are on their way across the country in a bus, and they are trying to find a safe haven called Evandale to try to fix the state of the world. I really enjoyed this one. I think it might be my favorite one out of the 3 that I've read so far. It definitely had action in it. It had some emotional tug on your heartstrings parts in it. I thought it was really well done. And I'm currently reading the last book, which is Silence in the Shadows. And I'm excited to see how kind of this series wraps up. I've really enjoyed it. I'm glad that I checked this series out this year. My first 5-star read of the month was Mother Thing by Ainsley Hogarth. And this book was just such a strange, unique time. I really enjoyed reading it. It is about Ralph and Abby, and they live with Ralph's mother in her house. Her name is Laura. And at the beginning of the book, Laura dies. And as the book goes on, Abby starts to believe that she is being haunted by Laura's ghost. They did not have a good relationship. They really, Abby wanted to love Laura so much. She wanted her to be that mother figure that Abby never had growing up, and Laura was basically just upset that Abby took away her only child, and especially her only son, Ralph. And it was a very unique look at grief, how we deal with passing of a loved one, how we deal with our grief, and how it changes our interactions between like our relationships with our partners, with the world, and sometimes it might just make you a little bit crazy. And I can appreciate that. Go Abby. But very unique, very strange, super descriptive writing. I loved the writing of it. I don't know if Ainsley Hogarth has written anything else, but I'm definitely interested in checking out anything else that they have. I would like to see what else they can bring to the literary world because I just really enjoyed Mother Thing. My next 5-star book was Monstrilio by Gerardo Samano Cordova. And this, another very unique book. It is about a woman whose son has died. She keeps a piece of his lung and hears an old folk tale that if she feeds his lung, it will grow into a person. And so she does, and it does. It grows into Monstrilio. And so the first part of the book, again, a look at grief, a look at how we express our emotions, a look at how our relationships change within our loved ones when something devastating happens in our lives. And so the first part of the book is all about the mother and growing Monstrilio, coming to terms with it. The father comes in, meets Monstrilio, and is like, what is happening? Then you kind of grow up with him. At the end, you do have Monstrilio's point of view. I did listen to this as an audiobook. It does have 2 different narrators because it has multiple point of view. I really loved this book. I enjoyed the audio. It's a unique way of looking at grief, and apparently I just read a lot of like grief-stricken books this month, and I'm not sorry about it. I enjoyed every one that I read. So if you're interested in books like that, I would recommend checking this one, Monstrilio, and Mother Thing out. The next 5-star book I read was Everyone on This Train is a Suspect by Benjamin Stevenson. I, again, listened to this one as an audiobook, and I highly recommend. It is a sequel So the first book is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, and it follows Ernest Cunningham, and he tells you about how everyone in his family has killed someone. So this next book is he has written a book about the first book. This is a book kind of about how to write a mystery book, a thriller mystery book. And they're on a train for a writing convention and someone dies and he has to figure out who killed this person. But it's not for everyone. I found it very charming. I think it's funny. I like it when the narrator like kind of breaks the fourth wall and talks to the reader. I don't know. I love Ernest. I love his dry humor. And I just really enjoyed listening to this. I thought it was a very good sequel. I gave the first book 5 stars too. And I really hope that there's a third book. I really need to know what's going to happen. During the epilogue, my jaw hit the floor. I immediately texted my best friend. I was like, I'm speechless. What am I even reading? I have to know what happens. So, highly, highly recommend this book, especially if you're looking for kind of like a comedy thriller, not too serious of a time, but a good time to read and or listen to. And my last 5-star book of February was Chlorine by Jade Song. I couldn't get enough of this book. I read it in 2 days. It is about Ren Yu, who is a swimmer. She is on the swim team. And at the end of the book, she turns into a mermaid. And it is not your typical, like, myths and legends of a mermaid. It is very much her figuring out how to be a person, how to relate to others, how to be something more than just a competitive swimmer, how to relate with her mother and her father, and what it's like being a Chinese American and growing up in this world and feeling like you don't fit in. Very quirky, very unique. The writing style was fabulous, super easy to read. I had a great time with this one. Highly, highly recommend. And can we just talk about this cover? Like, it's so cool and unique. And I don't know, I really like it. I definitely recommend, I recommend all the books that I've read this month. I think they were all fabulous in their own way. So I feel like February was a great reading month. I read 11 books. That's one of the highest amount of books I've ever read in a month. And, 4 or 5 stars, can't complain about that. I had a great reading month. I can't wait to see how March is going to be. It has some big shoes to fill because this month was just so fabulous. But have you read any of these books? Let me know. What did you think? And I'll talk to you later. Bye.